Welcome back to Hoops HD, everybody. It is Monday, November 18th, a little after 9 p.m. Eastern. That means it is time for the Hoops HD Report. I'm
Woohoo!
your host, Chad Sherwood. We've got David Griggs, who, according to Twitter today, I think he was supposed to be hosting tonight, but he's
Well,
not.
yeah, well, I
And,
should be.
and
The,
David
the
Dorman up
board of
here.
directors needs to make me the host.
That's, I think, our quickest buzzer ever. Matt Zukowski joined us below me. To his side, we got Joby Fortson and John Teitel. We thought John Sleek would be jumping on. He might jump on in a few minutes, but if he doesn't, well, we're going ahead anyhow. But we've got a lot to get to here. We're starting, Griggs, to get into slightly better games than we had in the first week of the season, I think. Maybe not a lot of bad ones still, but slightly better ones.
Right. It sort of phases in. Everybody likes to ease into their season. I say everybody, not everybody, but 98% of them. But last week, and I know we're going to get to that, we had some really good games that were played at really high levels in front of really full and enthusiastic crowds. I mean, some of the games, especially on Friday, just absolutely rocked. And it's starting to feel the way college basketball is supposed to feel. So,
Yeah, and I said we start things off here in the SEC, which still has 10 undefeated teams in it. Um,
yeah,
in a couple of the notable games this past week, beginning with um, where are we here? Matt, beginning with
Kentucky.
let's start with Kentucky Duke from last Tuesday. Kentucky, answering some questions I think in that game.
Oh yeah, that very impressive win there. And I think sides of Kentucky will fight for a protected seed this year. That I think Mark Pope is a great fit. Besides being an alum, playing a much more modern style of basketball than John Calipari. And with decent but probably not great talent, still beating a Duke team that has two probably top 10 picks in next year's draft.
And another huge game on Friday night. Joby, Purdue over Alabama. So Alabama,
Yeah,
not one of the undefeated teams in this
well,
conference.
and I was actually, I'll be the first to admit, I was very surprised by the result because I've been kind of down on Purdue and up on Alabama. And you know what? Those Purdue guards are real. I mean, let's just call it for what it is. I was wrong in that, though. Purdue is and we'll talk maybe more about them when we get to the Big Ten, because I'm still a believer in Alabama. I mean, the fact is, this team is still Final Four caliber. It's still, at least second weekend, protected seed type team. And Purdue went out and they won in really solid, convincing fashion. And so, give Purdue credit, and we're going to see the Boilers be back in the top 10.
Yeah.
Was part of it, I mean, when you play a road game in November in an environment like that, I think that was part of what contributed to Purdue winning. I'm not trying to take anything away from Purdue, but if that game's in Tuscaloosa or on a neutral site, I think the result is a little different. Sometimes you just need to work your way up. I think Alabama's only going to get better because of it, and if anything, it's starting to condition them more for some of the road trips, tough road trips that they're going to be making later on in the year. Um, this was a great game for both these teams to play. And even though Alabama didn't win it, I still think it was really important to go and play in a game like that. And they got way more out of that than some of the teams in this conference that are undefeated that haven't left home and are continuing to order off the pastry cart.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they have a loss. Another team with a loss, Doran, though it did not come this week, was Texas A&M. They bounced back from that UCF loss with a nice win over Ohio State, an Ohio State team that had already taken down Texas on the year.
Yeah, Ohio State was looking to take down the Texas schools there again, but A&M really set the tone defensively. They were in the Buckeyes' face the entire first half, and that got the Buckeyes down 10 or 12. The shots weren't falling against A&M like they did on the neutral court against Texas, and I'm real high on this A&M team. I think they're almost underrated in this SEC, in this loaded SEC. We'll see how it plays out. But I think A&M can knock off any. I can beat on their good day anyone in this conference. Watch out for them.
They're good. I agree with that completely. Titel, among those undefeated teams is Vanderbilt, who beat California, but then California beat USC last night, so maybe that's a little better win than you think.
It is Chad. Coach Mark Byington, he's had 40 games in the past 13 months. He's won 90% of them. He went 32-4 at JMU, and now he's 4-0 as the new head man at Vandy. Competition certainly goes up a notch this week. They're in the nice little field at the Charleston Classic. Then they open up December, 2 more in a row away from home, Va Tech and TCU. The long range shooting, not great, 28% behind the arc. When they move closer, it is great, 66% inside the arc. And the biggest surprise, BC transfer Devin McGlockton. He was perfectly fine last year, 10 points, 6 boards, a block a game. He's exploded this year, 17 points, 10 boards, 3 blocks a game. He's only playing not even 23 minutes a game, but he's shooting 74% from the field.
Yeah, so we've got a lot of teams to keep an eye on here. Griggs, one of the game I highlighted there, Ole Miss's win over Colorado State. Just the final score really caught my attention on this Ole Miss team that we had a lot of question marks about coming into the season.
Right, and there was certainly some rust in the gears when they first started. Was it Grambling that almost beat them? They just didn't look impressive in their bye games. But then in the one game that wasn't a bye game, they went out and clobbered Colorado State. So, yeah, Grambling was right in there. It almost pulled off what would have been an absurd upset. But a nice win for Ole Miss. I think we all thought that was a little bit of an aberration, that they were probably better than that, but it was a bit of a head scratcher. Big game against BYU coming up, not next week, but I guess shortly after that.
Yeah, that is that's their event, and then the chance for Purdue in the championship of that event as well. So
Yeah, another team I wanted to pull up, or if you were going to get to them, is Tennessee.
all right, I'll pull up Tennessee for you here real quick. I'll let you pull them, put them right there on the right next to Ole Miss.
Okay.
They are at 4-0 with only the Louisville win of note so far, though.
Yeah, and again, they haven't really done anything spectacular on the surface, but when you look a little bit below the surface, beating Louisville hardly. Louisville's good, but I mean, it hardly indicates that you're a protected seed or a 1 seed, but they did it on the road and they blew them into the sun. Austin P, probably not inside the bubble at all, but still pretty good. And Tennessee didn't just beat them, they blew them into the sun. That was a little, I don't want to call it a trap game, but sometimes in a game like that, a team without a lot of mental toughness will sometimes overlook them, and it might take them until halftime to get right and get settled. Tennessee basically just blew them away right from the tip, and it raises the question. I hate to use the term eye test, but when you look ahead, how good is this Tennessee team? They might be damn good.
Well, Joby, they get your Virginia Cavaliers in their next game, and then potentially Baylor after that. So I think we're going to learn a lot about this team in the next week, aren't we?
Yes, I think we're going to learn a lot about Virginia and Baylor as well, because I think Tennessee's proven themselves, at least initially. This Vols team, you knew preseason, they were taught. I think some of us picked them to, not me, but some of us picked them to win the SEC. This might be Rick Barnes' most complete team. We'll see. It's early days, but you got to like how they started the Austin P game in particular. Just to reemphasize, this is an Austin P team that went and beat Butler, a solid Butler team. And then those are the trap games. The in-state games are trap games. And they flat out said, not for us.
One of the team I want to bring up here, Dorman, nobody's really discussed them. I'll pull them on the left here. I've been a little bit impressed on what I've seen out of the Georgia Bulldogs so far this year. A team that I expected nothing out of, but they've not the win at Georgia Tech, being a North Florida team that had beaten taken down a few scalps already. Should we be paying a little more attention to them?
I agree with you, Chad. I like this team coming into the season. I read some publications that said the talent was better, the group as a whole was better. I like Mike White as a coach. I don't know if he had enough time to get it going or what happened in Florida for the Gators with him, but I think he's got a solid team here. Now, coming up, we're going to see St. John's and Marquette. They're going to get next week. So that'll be a real test. Then we'll know what we're really having the Bulldogs, because Marquette and St. John's will definitely test them on neutral courts. Let's see what they got.
All right, and I think that Mr. Sleeka has joined us. First of all, John, how are you? And second of all, I'm going to give you a quick chance here for any comments you want on this entire upcoming week here. And there is a lot of games. They don't even all fit on the screen. We've got to scroll down there.
I was hoping I wouldn't have to discuss our arch rival Georgia, but alas, there's going to be a few teams that we're going to be discussing as some of the exempt tournaments start to get underway. But we had already mentioned Georgia, who's going to be down in Baja Mar, I believe, going to be taking on St. John's.
Yeah, there are a lot of good games here. And by the way, we are recording this. It's about a little before 9:30 Eastern. Quick note here, Arkansas playing tonight. Home game against Pacific. That's a 5-point game about midway through the second half. If that upset does happen, we'll circle back to the SEC before the end of the show. But not a good look for a ranked Arkansas team so far this evening.
Not at all. Wow.
And
Friday
I'll throw
night.
this. I'll throw this out there also. Auburn playing as we are talking about early in the first half, but they're in a close game with North Alabama so far as well. Lot of time left in that game, so who knows if either one of those could really happen. But let's go ahead and jump on to another conference though here. How about we had a few little mentions about the Big Ten earlier. Let's go right over to the Big Ten, and I don't know where we want to start here, but Matt, maybe I'll let you make a call here. Where do you want to start on the Big Ten?
I will reluctantly give the Red Menace some due with that very nice win Friday night that hasn't been mentioned yet. Sorry to say for John and David here, but yeah, put a rare Wisconsin 100-point game here against anyone, much less a real solid team in Arizona. And that like a little bit fluky, and that the I think the whistles are still going on from that game, but still an impressive effort for a Wisconsin team that I don't think many thought all that much of going into this year. But I think no AJ Stewart, Chucky Hepburn. It might be addition by subtraction.
And again, going to games that are going on as we record this. So there's 11 and a half minutes left in the second half. Wisconsin currently down a point to UTRGV at home. So everything they gained from an Arizona win is given away with that one, I think.
Man, that must have been some party after they beat Arizona. Wow.
Titel, I know you had a few thoughts on Iowa.
So
Top of the standings there.
So last year, Coach Fran McCaffrey started 5-5, 4-0 this year, 10-point win over Washington State in Illinois last Friday. They have an interesting non-conference schedule. They got plenty of cupcakes, 7 teams outside the top 200, but plenty of top 100 teams in addition to Washington State. They play Utah State, Iowa, and Utah, but there's nothing in between. It's all or nothing. They play great free throw defense. Their opponents are only making 51% of their free throws, and they have a nice offensive balance. 5 guys in double digits, including academic All-American Peyton Sandfort and defending Conference Rookie of the Year Owen Freeman, who averaged 11 points and 7 boards a game last year. This year, he's up to 17 points and 9 boards a game. He's only playing 24 minutes a game.
Wow.
Academic. I never understood what academics had to do with basketball. Like, why do they need to waste time with academics?
Joby, Michigan State was in there with Kansas, but did not find a way to win. Any thoughts on this team here? Is Sparty any good this year or not? Do we just not know yet?
They definitely showed some strength against what, I think Kansas is the top team in the country. And so you play with them. Izzo's going to keep this team competitive. Plain simple. Are they going to? I don't think this is a Final Four Michigan State style team, but they're going to be getting their scout proven by the Kansas game. They could be playing a very good Purdue team and get a scout. Very good Rutgers team get a scout, and I fully expect to see this team in the discussion in March. And I don't know if they'll get to the protected seed level, but they proved that their ceiling is a little higher than maybe people are giving them credit for. The other games they've played, they are bye games, but at least they're taking care of business by 20, 30 points in these bye games. So, sometimes Michigan State doesn't. Sometimes Michigan State kind of lopes along early and they're beating like in Oakland by 5 in the preseason, in the early season. Not this year. So, this is a solid team, but let's hold our water on saying that they could be more than that.
Yeah, Joby, to follow up real quick, I am impressed with them defensively. I legitimately am. Offensively, if you look, they're ranked 67th, not bad overall, certainly not good, but not bad. But when it comes to shooting from the outside, anybody else think, are they shooting at the rim?
At 20% at the 3-point range. Titel, where's that rank? Nationwide, not Big Ten, but nationwide.
I believe it's fifth worst. So to answer your question, they're aiming at the wrong rim, I believe.
One more team here, real quick. Salika, Indiana with a win over South Carolina by 16 points. Now, this is not last year's South Carolina team. This is this year's South Carolina team. But how about the Hoosiers? Because the pollsters love this team.
Well, the polls love this team. It's probably similar to Xavier beating Wake Forest. Sure, it's nice to beat a somewhat name opponent, but until we get Indiana out of Assembly Hall, the jury's still going to be out a little bit.
Yeah, and here's the upcoming schedule. Indiana's next game is a home game against UNC Greensboro, so we're not going to find out much about them this week. Big games
Unless
this
they
week.
lose.
Unless they lose, yes.
Yeah.
Keep your eye on Penn State. Penn State is a good basketball team. They haven't played anyone yet, so this is just by watching them play. Penn State's pretty good.
They had the win over Vatek actually, which
Yeah.
And it was by what, 18 points, 22 points. Sorry.
Yeah, they took them. They're going to get Clemson or I forgot
San Francisco.
San Francisco in a Sunshine Slam next week. That'll be a good test. But I think Penn State might be able to make some noise this year.
And not much of a non-conference strength to schedule, though.
I will warn people: Virginia Tech will not help that strength of schedule. They're god awful, and I'm shocked by it. I thought that they would be like a mid-tier ACC team. I think they're going to be playing patty cake with Georgia Tech at the bottom.
Yeah, I called the Penn State Tech game the most Atlantic 10 game you could get without two teams that were actually in the A10. But Penn State was impressive in that.
I believe they both once were in the A10.
They were,
but not at the same time.
Yeah.
Matt, one of the key upcoming games this entire week is tomorrow night. Purdue at your Marquette team.
Oh, that's a great game. Rematch of last year's Maui Invitational Final, but on campus this year, or close to Marquette's campus. And that's what I like a lot of what Purdue brought in this year, even losing Edie. I think probably because they're so philosophically similar in how they run the program, Purdue and Marquette. But yeah, should be a real good game. Can Marquette turn over Purdue's guards enough? And that can Purdue hit some open threes and Marquette give up trying to pressure them? And that'll be interesting to test. I think probably fairly high scoring and very entertaining.
Yeah. Also circle this game Wednesday night here, Illinois and Alabama. Slika, where's that game being played? You always know these things.
Birmingham.
Okay, so it's technically a neutral court game. It is going to be a somewhat Alabama crowd.
It'll be very pro Alabama, and I think is there a return game in Chicago? I think it was one of those
next year
series. Yeah, okay,
correct.
And then a couple others I highlighted there include Iowa, Utah State, Nebraska at Creighton, Rutgers with a road trip down to Kennesaw State.
The Civil War.
Explain that one.
The Civil War.
Rutgers going to Kennesaw.
Rutgers go to Kennesaw State. Actually, it's a bit of a shout out to Ace Bailey, who could be the #1 draft pick next year. He's from Chattanooga. Kennesaw only about 40 minutes south of Chattanooga.
So was Chattanooga unavailable? There is
apparently they were because that's what the only thing I don't understand is why it wasn't Chattanooga they're going to play, but they're going to Kennesaw. So
yeah.
Anyhow, let's keep rolling along here. Let's just we discussed a little Big East. Let's jump right into the Big East next. And Titel, I want to start with you because I am suddenly hearing all over the internet, wherever I'm reading, people screaming about 4-0. DePaul is the team this year. Are they right?
I mean, it's rare to have the National Coach of the Year award decided before Thanksgiving, but Chris Holtmann takes over a team that won 3 games last year, and he's 4-0 after a 26-point demolition last Friday over a Duquesne team that actually won a game in the NCAA tournament last March. They do have 3 cupcakes to finish off the month. They could be 7-0 when heading to Texas Tech to start December. They're getting it done on both ends of the court. Top 50 in the nation, both on offense, making 39% of their shots behind the arc, and top 50 defending the arc, only allowing 24%. The key is the new backcourt. He brought in a transfer from UIC, Isaiah Rivera, and a transfer from Coastal Carolina, Jacob Meyer. They're combining for 32 points and making a combined 5 threes a game.
I get it, but is it not just a little bit too early to put this team at the top when they've beaten 4 teams that the J&G has at 293 or worse so far?
They
No, they
exceeded
might not
their
lose
win
again.
total from last year.
They're
But
certainly better, and it's been fun.
Mhm.
And I hope they are 7-0 because after that they might they might only win 2 or 3 more.
they got that game against Loyola in end of December. Let's kind of circle that as maybe win number 8 for the season.
I don't think they win that one. But Chris Holtman is a phenomenal coach. I think he's just done great everywhere he's been. Gardner Webb, Butler, Ohio State, and now DePaul. And whether or not they get all the way there this year, they're certainly heading in that direction. For the first time ever, it seems like there's hope at DePaul.
Hey, Mark Aguirre might just be walking through that door. Come on.
Yeah.
And Terry Cummings.
Well, Joe, speaking of people walking through doors and maybe the wrong way, Kyle Neptune is still head coach of Villanova. How much longer does this last? 0-2 week this week.
I mean,
they're I believe they play tomorrow night with a shot to go back to the seventh place, to the last place game in the Big Five Classic for the second straight year.
Chad, you just can't blame them for losses in the Big Five. I mean, come on, they're so intense. They're almost as intense as a Virginia Villanova game. So the Villanova's in trouble. I mean that team, they aren't good shooters. And so they're a big team with Dixon and some of these guys. But what struck me was that a Virginia team that had trouble on the defensive glass last year. That was probably the biggest weakness on the defensive side, was the inability. And Villanova had maybe 1 or 2 offensive rebounds the whole game. I mean, it was just with all that size. And it's like, guys, there's a lot of problems here. And, they even had like home cooking or neutral cooking from the refs, and they couldn't do much more. It was, this team is really scary on how it's going to turn out. And so hopefully for Villanova's sake, it gets better, because this could be, if it continues like this, it could be a mid-season change.
A couple other teams here. Matt, Seton Hall had a very strange week this week. A loss to Hofstra, 49-48, followed by a almost amazing 54-28 win over Wagner. 28 points. So maybe they can play some defense. That's all,
That's what they're going toward, like 280 in offensive efficiency, like 40 in defensive efficiency. It's like that type
just
of
the defense
like,
is 10th.
Yeah,
I mean,
well, when you only give her 28 points in a game, Greg, you're going to be in the top 10.
And that's what, like, to where I think come Big East play, they'll get worn down some, just because, like, they'll struggle to score, and eventually, like, a game, it might be like 45-40 at the under 8 timeout, and that's like 65-46 or something when they finally give out. And like, so it's sort of like watching the Bears play with very good defenses and eventually break because the offense can't do anything.
Where are we up to here? Dorman, here's the upcoming schedule. I mentioned, there we go. Tomorrow night, Penn at Villanova. Villanova lost again, returns them to the 5th. That's part of the Big Five Classic, and returns it for the second straight year to the 5th place game with a shot to finish 6th in the Big Five. But there are some other interesting games here. Yes, go ahead.
There's some awesome games. Thursday night, St. John's is going to go against Baylor. That should be really great. Villanova, again, let's see what they got, but they're playing Maryland over the weekend on Sunday. So we talked about Georgia earlier. This was the game I was talking about. Can they hang around with St. John's? The Big East has some real intriguing games. Nebraska at Creighton, I'll be watching. The Big East will be tested this week.
Yeah, throw in Marquette, Georgia, throw in St. John's. We'll then have Tennessee or Virginia after Baylor.
And St. John's, we didn't talk much about it. They're in the rankings. I sort of thought blah, but New Mexico, I think, is pretty good, and the Johnnies beat them fairly handily.
Now, I believe there have been something like 21, 22 father versus son games that as coaches have ever played in the NCAA. The fathers, I believe, have lost twice ever at this point. So you just can't beat your father when you go up against him
I guess
as a
not.
game.
There was a comical moment. The fans started chanting, "Who's your daddy?" And Rick Pitino was trying to get them to stop.
And
I'm
Richard
also
was pointing to his dad. It was
Yeah.
great.
it's still a week away here, but Salika, UConn Memphis next Monday night, a little bit interesting as well. That's the first game. I believe that's the first round game out in Maui, if I'm correct. Or
Correct.
Yeah, that's going to be the first game in Maui, and then tomorrow night we get to see, I think, the debut of East Texas A&M taking on UConn, at least in the workbook era here.
Yeah.
yeah, East Texas A&M, formerly known as Texas A&M Commerce, made a name change already early in the season. Salika, let me stick with you as we jump over to the Big 12, where we've got looks like 8 undefeated teams left at the moment. Well, let me ask you, where would you like to start?
You could probably start with Kansas, who had a
Okay.
little bit of a struggle in the Champions Classic, but that combined with a decent win in their bye game against Oakland, they'll still hold on to be number one this week.
I'm surprised you didn't go. Let's start with Cincinnati, sitting there in the top 25 still for some inexplicable reason.
Wake me when at least Cincinnati travels across the river to NKU, where they at least leave their home arena tomorrow.
All right. Titel, Oklahoma State among the undefeated teams of this conference as well.
So I don't know if a coach has ever won 22 or more games at 3 different schools in 3 consecutive years. Steve Lutz won 24 at Corpus Christi in 2023. He won 22 last year at WKU. He's 3-0 this year. He beat St. Thomas in Southern Illinois last week. Competition's going up a notch this week. The nice little field at the Charleston Classic, then 3 more in a row away from home. Tulsa, Seton Hall, Oklahoma. What's amazing is they're still undefeated despite allowing 42% shooting from behind the arc. But as long as they keep forcing 19 turnovers a game, I think their defense is going to keep them in most games.
Matt, UCF had that nice win to start the season against A&M, sitting here at 3-0 as well, beat Florida Atlantic this past week. We're starting to pay attention.
Yeah, no, that's what like as soon as they beat A&M, that's one I think is going to be a Q1 win. And that, so yeah, I'm definitely paying some attention to where I think this conference could bring 9 or 10 teams into the tournament, and I think they could very well be one of those, even if it's like 9th or 10th. That like we'll be discussing heartily, either just getting in or just getting out potentially. But yeah, no, they're a solid team, and that even it's a rogues gallery of people that Johnny Dawkins has brought in, but.
I'm big on this UCF team.
Speaking of the UCF, we had Joby, one other team that is really turning my head here, and I know people wrote them off due to an exhibition loss where they got blown out by Duke, but Arizona State played well against Gonzaga, now beat a very good Grand Canyon team, and really had a very solid win against a St. Thomas team that could be atop of their conference.
Yeah, and I mean the Grand Canyon win, that's Grand Canyon's season in a lot of ways. If you think about it from the Grand Canyon standpoint, that is a great win. And they won it solidly. They won it by double digits. I mean, I'm surprised they even gave. I mean, they went to the kennel and gave the Zags a test.
They almost beat them.
I mean,
I'm
in shock about Arizona State because I really thought that they were the bottom of the conference. I mean, like rock bottom, and they were going to be part of the demise. Demise is too strong a word, but part of the Big 12 back to normal. Not everybody's a tournament team. Sorry. And not every team can help your net. I thought they would be a anchor, kind of like the Louisville to DePaul, over the last few years. And definitely not the case this year.
I'm with you, Joe.
Explain why, but they just play. They're playing better.
Grand Canyon wasn't quite at full strength, but Grand Canyon also has a very deep rotation. So, I mean, that was still a really good win over a team that I think we're going to see in the top 25 before the end of the year. It might be February, but GCU, I think, is on pace to win 30 games again.
I have to be honest. I'm also impressed with the Santa Clara win.
Yeah.
I mean, on a neutral court, that's good. It's a solid WCC team. I mean, not going to be a tournament team, but they're going to be in the top half.
Yeah, I agree.
There are a ton of good games coming up this week. Starting Sleeka tomorrow night, Cincinnati at Northern Kentucky.
Big
We got to
Mac Bridge.
again. They're at Northern Kentucky. This was, I believe, a game that they gave Northern Kentucky after they got to use Northern Kentucky's arena during a couple years ago. And you can see all the other highlighted games there as well, including UCF, Wisconsin, Baylor against St. John's, and then the winner of Tennessee, Virginia. Duke, Arizona, Titel coming up Friday night. How about that game?
I'm terrified. I still don't know how we beat them in Durham last November, but hopefully we will regroup after the loss.
Titel just throws.
Otherwise, we flag Michael for 40 against us because our defense is suspect.
There we go. Yeah, we got him back. And again, Iowa State Auburn, is that Maui as well, or am I in the wrong tournament?
That is Maui, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean that's the first. Look, see, it's still a week away, Dorman. But Iowa State and Auburn in the quarterfinals of the Maui Invitational, and then rematching again.
Winner gets UConn and Michigan State. Maui's loaded this year, just loaded every game. All 4 games every day will be a lot of fun out there.
Yeah, if you want the Maui bracket, all the other tournament brackets up there on the in-season tournaments tab, by the way. What conference did we skip here? Oh, how about the ACC, Joby, your conference? We talked a little bit about your Virginia team earlier, but I guess there's quite a few stories we could dissect here.
Pittsburgh's showing that they are trying to get back to the tournament. I think that they've been a pretty good story. Winning the backyard brawl on the court was a nice win this
backyard
week.
Maul.
Yeah, they killed them, and now West Virginia is that bottom of the Big 12, not Arizona State, but Pittsburgh's looked good doing it, and this could be very well. We talked about them as a possible tournament team. And right now they're delivering at the level that we thought they would right now. So I'll give Pittsburgh a nice little shout out.
And should we also be giving a shout out here, Matt, to Syracuse? I mean, they are 3-0. They beat everybody, and they take multiple overtimes if it's bad teams, but they are 3-0, right?
That's like a DePaul 3-0 there. They're like a 3-0 that might become about a 10-21 at the end of the year.
Yeah. So. Real quick on Pittsburgh, more specifically the backyard brawl. You sometimes wonder when these rivalries go dormant for a little bit or they go on hiatus, will the temperature still be hot when they come back? And I'm not going to repeat what was being chanted by the student section, but I think the answer to that question is yes, it's still very, very heated.
Titel, among the undefeated teams, how about the Stanford Cardinal, one of our new members of the conference?
With a new coach, Kyle Smith won 25 games at Wazoo last year. He looks like he might get there again. He's 4-0 in his new conference with his new team. Schedule will get much tougher in the weeks ahead. They're at Santa Clara. They have this weird one-off game against the Lopes at Acrisure Arena right before the Acrisure Holiday Invitational, but it's not part of the Holiday Invitational for some reason. Then they're at Cal in a neutral site game against Oregon in San Jose. They've been great at the free throw line, top 20 in the nation, 81% at the line. The star remains the big man, Maxime Renault, averaged 16 and 10 last year as a junior. He's up to 21 points, 13 boards as a senior. And hopefully the French Olympic team can convince him to play for them in 2028. I don't know if they have any other good big men on the French team.
I guess let's look at some of the upcoming scores here. Dorman, again, tons of games ahead this week. We've discussed a few of them already, including games like the Virginia-Tennessee game, but there's a lot here to dissect, I guess.
That Virginia-Tennessee is part of a tournament there, I believe, in Brooklyn with Syracuse and Texas. I think the winners and losers play again on Friday.
Baylor and St. John's, yes.
Thank you. Baylor and St. John's. The winners will play the next day. You mentioned Duke and Arizona on Friday. What else do we have there? Scrolling down, Cincinnati's going to go to Georgia Tech.
I think
Monday
the
night.
Pitt
There it is.
LSU game is something to watch
Yeah.
because is Pitt for real walking
Yes.
into LSU, who's decent? Pitt should win that game if they want to do what I just said to start off the ACC schedule.
And a little under the radar there, Clemson Monday night is going to San Francisco. I believe they're playing in the Warriors' home. That should be San Francisco is really good this year. They can play with Clemson.
Keep an eye on North Carolina again before they start the Maui against Dayton on Monday. They're actually playing a road game at Hawaii on Saturday. Get an extra game in on that road trip too, because there's nothing else to do in Hawaii other than play basketball, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Let's turn to Joby. Let's turn to your favorite conference. Mountain West.
You're looking at 11 NCAA tournament teams.
If it was last year, it was just about that many. Although I gotta say, Joby, a little more red so far this season. A few more losses than we had last year. I think at this point, even out of this league.
Yeah, and more importantly, the margins are not. If you remember last year, the margins of these wins were ridiculous. Now the margins of the losses are happening. When you look at Texas Tech, Wyoming, Ole Miss just spanked Colorado State. Who, give Colorado State some credit. They, went to overtime against Tennessee earlier. Oh, wait a minute, Tennessee State. It's not a good conference.
But yeah, you look at Fresno losing to Bakersfield, San Jose State losing a home game to UC
Boise
Santa
had to beat
Barbara.
Clemson. That just drives me nuts.
Well, Boise's good.
And Boise's good, and it was at Boise. So
yeah. And New Mexico's kind of good
trip for Clemson, but I don't even know why Clemson scheduled it. But yeah.
Boise's good, and like New Mexico's kind of good. And when you look at Nevada, they got legalized gambling, and you look at Utah State, it's in Utah, and BYU's pretty good, so they're near a good team.
Yeah, and Nevada, had a good week because those are decent under the radar teams that they then just demolished. It's not like they're beating Weber State by like 10. They beat them by 30. That's impressive. Beating Santa Clara, that we've already mentioned, by close to 30, that's impressive. So I'll give Nevada some credit.
Dorman, San Diego State, we know nothing about. They've played 2 games, and one was against some school called Occidental. Maybe it was accidental because they accidentally scheduled them. But we're going to learn a lot more tonight. I know by the time most of you watch this game's going to file, it's about to tip as we record this. They're hosting the Zags.
At home. Their arena, the show will be rocking. I heard they've been waiting outside all day to get in there. Great atmosphere when they play anybody. Doesn't matter who they play, they always turn out the San Diego State students. But tonight they'll be charged up. Yes, Gonzaga is coming a calling. Like we discussed earlier, ASU gave them a game. Gonzaga had their hands full till late in the game. So we'll see what San Diego State can do. They do lose their point guard, Butler. He's now at Kentucky. He was the heart and soul of that Final Four championship game run. So they bring a lot of new pieces. So we're not sure what they have yet. Haven't really been tested yet. But totally agree. We will find out in an hour.
One more team quickly, Titel. How about Utah State?
So last year
they beat Westminster this week. I mean, that's
the dog show. The dog.
the Westminster Kennel Club.
The dog show.
So last year, Coach Danny sprinkled 12-1 in non-conference play. His replacement, Gerard Calhoun, has kept the train on the track this year, 3-0. His offense is number 2 in the nation, 107 points a game. They're leading Montana by double digits as we speak, and they're going to face Iowa in Kansas City on Friday. Then they head to Florida for the NIT season tip-off next week. The most amazing part of their amazing offense, they have 3 starters scoring less than 10 points a game because they have so much depth. And I'm going to talk about their best shooter later on in my final thought.
Okay. So we'll get back to them in a moment. Upcoming games here. We mentioned the Gonzaga-San Diego State game tonight already. Matt, there's a few other interesting games, including this Utah State-Iowa game. I think we mentioned that a little bit earlier. Maybe a few others of some interest here this week.
I'm looking at a big week for Nevada. Vandy had a new tool of that probably VCU if they beat Vandy at a neutral. And that's another VCU, another team we'll look at that's potentially like at-large team out of the A10. So
They've been a little disappointing so far, but yeah,
Yeah, and then they could
we'll
get
get to them.
Miami or Oklahoma State or something like that on Sunday. That's a 8-team event they're in there, Nevada, by the way.
Utah State, Iowa should be good Friday night.
Oh yeah,
Let's jump over. Let's jump to the West Coast Conference. Obviously, Gonzaga. We kind of discussed them already with their game that they're going to be playing tonight. Only other win this week was a thorough demolishing of UMass Lowell on Friday night. But a couple other teams maybe worth mentioning here. And Salika, why don't we start with the St. Mary's? They got that solid win out in the Sanford Pentagon in South Dakota over Nebraska on Sunday.
Well, keep in mind this is also a Nebraska team that made the NCAA tournament last year and possibly could have similar hopes this year. And likewise, Akron, another team that is expected to contend in the MAC. So those are some solid wins for the Gales right there. I think San Francisco showing that the win against Boise was not a fluke. They get some nice wins at home against Chicago State and Long Beach State as well. And we've already
Dominating wins, though. They blew them off the court, and that's what you like to see against a team like that.
Yep, especially with a looming game against Clemson coming for the Dons.
Yeah. And the Gales, though, Griggs, I mean, let's not overlook that, 20 points over Akron also. That's a solid Akron team.
yeah. I mean, they've been solid. They don't have the attention of the voters yet, or at least not or at least not the writers. But St. Mary's good again. So is Stanford. I mean, just to echo everything that's already heard.
Well,
Wazoo off to a decent start as well.
decent start. They lost that game to Iowa and
Yeah.
Titel. Oregon State off to a 4-0 start.
So since they made the Elite Eight in 2021, Coach Wayne Tinkle has had 3 straight losing seasons. Apparently, leaving the Conference of Champions has turned things around. They're 4-0, all 4 wins by 19 points or more. We'll find out if they're for real on Thursday when the Ducks head to Corvallis. The biggest surprise, junior guard Nate Kings. He only lost 2 games in 2023 when he was in junior college. He didn't lose any last year, unfortunately, because he missed the entire year with an ACL injury. And he's still undefeated this year while scoring 17 points a game and he's shooting 13 of 23 behind the arc. If you've never heard of him, there's a good reason. He changed his last name from Meithoff to Kings in the offseason.
Well, hold on a second about them leaving the Conference of Champions, though.
Yeah.
They are still in the Conference of Champions. It still exists here
Yeah.
at HoopsHD.
Yes.
And if you watch their games, at the
This is a
Beaver
middle.
games,
Yeah.
on the court, it still has the Pac-12 logo. That's not a joke, and the West Coast Conference logo. So if you're not confused enough, keep watching Oregon State basketball.
And if you want the Conference of Champions standings, by the way, check out our Mythical Conferences tab right up there. We're going to be following them all season long. Congrats to Cal after the 1-0 start with their win over USC in conference play, the first conference game of the season.
More importantly, Chad, we also have to congratulate Cal on winning the ACC Big Ten Challenge with the win against USC.
Yeah.
I'm
I'm
just
sorry, with 2
wondering if
Pac-12
Santa
teams playing
Clara-
the ACC Big Ten, that blows my mind. Upcoming schedule, though. The
I'm
Zags.
just wondering if Santa Clara and Grand Canyon are joining because both Stanford and Arizona State are playing them. Despite being in conferences separated by a Mississippi River.
Zags have a home game against Long Beach on Wednesday. St. Mary's has 2 bye tests that they should win this week against Cal Poly and somebody called Stanislaus State.
What the hell is a Stannis?
Hey,
Where
Chad,
that's-
I would like to point out, look at
Okay.
those ratings and the
Go back.
drop-off. Look at the drop-off, the utter drop-off among the top 5. And then it is just, and it's across every rating.
And a real quick note here: we mentioned Pacific earlier. That game against Arkansas, they ended up losing by 19 points. So that
So we have a
that
similar
little-
chasm in the Big East right now.
over to the A10. Let's go take a quick look over here. Matt, there's a few teams off to nice starts, including this Dayton team that's 4-0 and has looked pretty good so far.
Yeah, they're doing so far with no Durant Holmes, replacing him. I think it got a little healthier, and Kobe Bryant at Kentucky. So man, they lost some talent, but still, Anthony Grant's got them rolling.
And on top of that, we also have VCU. We mentioned them earlier. They're undefeated. Joby, this could be a two-bid A10 this year. Again, I know because of the auto bid being stolen last year.
Yeah, I mean, VCU is, Greg said, hey, VCU has been disappointed. I don't think so. Yes, they've played 4 bye games, and I'm including Boston College as a bye game. But they've won them all very solidly. And so, yeah, VCU, we'll see, obviously, as the season goes on, can VCU go through out of conference? They play that good New Mexico team that Griggs mentioned. They should take care of business against Colorado State. So we'll see how VCU does play. They play Seton Hall. So, these aren't amazing teams per se, but you could see VCU put up a very gaudy record against reasonable competition. That's an opportunity for an at-large.
Yeah, and I was a little hard on VCU. I think I was getting my my notes crossed here. One of the teams that you have to keep an eye on that is slow out of the gate, but I think will sprint and catch up is St. Louis. I still think that they're talent-wise anyway, one of the better teams in the conference, if not the best team.
And Avila's been injured also for them, so that's kind of hurt a little bit.
Yeah,
a team that
go ahead.
A team that hasn't been slow out of the gates. Watch out for Loyola. They went to Princeton Friday night, which was a fantastic basketball game, up and down the court. Not what you would think. They're really good. They're talented. They're well coached. They got this big guy, down low Rubin, who presents a defensive. He's just really big, and you get down there, and he's blocking shots and changing shots. And Loyola Chicago is really good this year. I'd watch out for them.
Yeah, LaSalle making a little more noise than we thought.
I want to ask Tytel about LaSalle, actually. Fran Duffy's team off to a 4-0 start, and the shot if they beat Temple at home in a couple of weeks to be in the Big 5 title game.
I was worried about my former Penn coach tarnishing his legacy after back-to-back losing seasons, but if they can win the Boardwalk Battle in Daytona Beach this week, then 2 tough but winnable games after that. They could be 9-0 when they head to face North Carolina in mid-December. One reason they're winning, opponents shooting 51% from the free throw line, the worst in the nation. If you don't think it matters, ask Drexel, who only made 4 of 11 from the line in a 3-point loss to the Explorers last Saturday. Biggest surprise, point guard Corey McKeithen. He only averaged 5 points, 2 assists a game in 3 years at Rider, 18 points and 4 assists a game this year.
Griggs, I want to give some good news also about this Boardwalk Battle that LaSalle is going to be in. You do not have to get a subscription to Pass the Ball Live. You just have to get a subscription to Baller TV Live instead.
Oh,
which is just as bad, by the way.
Yeah.
There is. I think we should also be highlighting though St. Joe's Texas Tech. St. Joe's is in the Big 5 championship game and did beat Villanova the other day. We got VCU Seton Hall this week. So there's a few other good games here, and a good old throwback A10 game between UMass and Temple.
Man, yeah,
coming up on Saturday.
Yeah, they had some battles back in the day.
Those were great.
The old Calipari John Chaney game. That was classic hoops. One last conference. Take a quick look over here at the American, where I think that only team we've really been looking at so far seriously, Matt, has been this Memphis team who is still undefeated.
Yeah, that's the one that probably has a realistic shot of getting at large if needed. But man, like UAB been a disappointment, I think.
Yeah, but
in that North Texas still got a little bit going, but man, like it's a struggle for that league right now to where they need Texas to be solidly inside the bubble and then have a bad American tournament, I think, if they want multiple bids.
North Texas had just quickly say North Texas had a road loss at McNeese tonight. Could have been a nice scalp for them too, but sorry, Joby, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say Memphis at least was smart and realized the conference was going to be down. They have a very strong out-of-conference schedule coming. They've already won at UNLV on the road.
Yeah, they did.
Then they've got – all right, listen to this run of games. San Francisco, UConn, Clemson, Virginia, the 2 Mississippi schools. I mean, if that's going to give you at least a foundation that if you can get a 2 or 3 games above 500 against that out of conference slate, which I think is perfect, playing Mississippi State, playing Virginia, playing Clemson, these are winnable games for Memphis.
All this, yeah.
And so, but they'll be good teams. Those teams are not going to be like big weights. They're not Georgia Tech, as to pick on Georgia Tech. So this is going to provide you with a lot of tier 2 wins at worst if you can do it. It's in front of you, but Memphis's season will be determined over the next month, because if they only go 2-5 during that stretch, they're at large is in trouble, because this conference just won't provide you opportunities.
Titel, East Carolina off to a 4-0 start. A little surprising. A big win over Mount Olive this past week.
You don't like any of these little schools, Chad.
I said it was a big win. Come on.
Westminster, you hate everybody. Coach Mike Schwartz has had losing records in each of his first 2 years in Greenville. Third time's apparently the charm. He had a 1-point double OT win over Mason last Saturday, despite missing his starter, Trevion LeBeau. If they can win the Boardwalk Battle in Daytona Beach this week, 2 winnable home games after that, could be 9-0 when heading to South Carolina on December 7th to face a Gamecock team who they only lost to by 6 last December. The offense is atrocious. They're outside the top 250 from 1-point and 2-point and 3-point land. So how on earth are they winning, John? Because they can track down their misses. 52 rebounds per game, number 1 in the nation.
A couple of things I want to mention real quick here. First of all, Dorman, Wichita State, undefeated, and it was home, but it was one over Northern Iowa team that we thought was a pretty decent team out of the Valley this year.
Yeah, I'm high on. I still think Northern Iowa should be top or win the Valley. So I agree with you. That was a good win. They do have a couple of big games coming up. I can't think of the top of my head, but Wichita State will be a player in the American this year.
Here, I'll get that schedule up there. St. Louis, Minnesota, either Florida or Wake after that. And a tough road trip to DePaul. And look at this December 29th. They're going to be playing some friends.
Yes.
Oh, God. Okay, they should be like removed from the survival board just for that. And the other team you want to mention,
David
of course, Chad,
Swimmer's got amazing post moves.
Griggs, FAU, what a pair of games this weekend. A double overtime loss to Charleston, followed by an overtime win over Liberty. Hell of a week for them, and a great event down there at the Field of
68 guys. Tip of the hat to them. They painted a masterpiece with that event that they put on down there. The last game was a little bit of a snoozer, but at FAU, I think everybody was sort of ready to write them off after Dusty May left. They figured that the run was over. While they're probably certainly not Final Four good, they might very well be NCAA tournament good again. And I know that they didn't pull out the win down there, but they played really well against a really good Charleston team that doesn't lose much at home. And when you look at the rest of this league, FAU can beat just about anyone in this conference. I think FAU is going to be there at the end.
They got an event this week. Oklahoma State, potentially Miami or Drake, then potentially Nevada or Seton Hall or VCU or Vandy. If they can win that event, you take notice of them, I think. And I think they can win. Sure. I think they have as good a shot as anybody maybe to win that event. It's a fairly even event, I think, across the board there. A few other games to look at here. They're all on the screen. Wichita State, St. Louis, another one to look at here. I think we mentioned that earlier. There's the rest of them. But that does conclude all of our conferences here. Just quick note, as I mentioned, both Arkansas and Auburn did pull off their wins, and Wisconsin looks like they're going to survive against RGV. There's like 2 seconds left.
Rio Grande Valley had the ball down one in what appeared to be the final possession of the game. They did get what I thought was a decent shot off, but it did not go in. Almost an amazing upset.
But let's run our final thoughts. And since I got the screen share up, Titel, I'm going to start with you.
I would like to discuss Utah State senior forward Aubin Gatter-Etsy. He was good last year at Stetson, 12 points, 8 boards, and shot 71%. Pretty good, right? After transferring to the Aggies, he's become near perfect. The output remains the same. The shooting is what's sensational. He's taken 15 field goal attempts this year and has made 15 field goals this year. He has missed a couple free throws and has committed a couple turnovers. So while he's not perfect, he's certainly behoorlijk geweldig, which means pretty great in Dutch, which is the most spoken primary language of his home nation of Belgium.
If you wanted your lesson in Dutch, you've got it for the night. We expect one every week, Tytel, by the way.
Wow.
But let me go through the rest of you here. And Joby, any final thoughts from you?
Yes, the one quick one. We mentioned it off camera, but I wanted to point out one of the coolest new features that's on the Hoops HD website, and that is your DEF CON rating.
Yeah.
Even at this stage, you can still look at, if you are a fan of a particular school, you can go and click on that school team page and find out what games. It helps you determine what games are important for you. At this early stage, of course, it's not, there's a lot of moving pieces, but it still shows you, hey, if I'm Marquette, sorry, you wanted Wisconsin to win that because you play Wisconsin. Yeah. And so it helps your game watching experience. And it's a fun little feature that we have unique for Hoops HD. So I wanted to.
I'm pulling Rutgers up for you right now as you go, as he mentions it, just so you guys can all take a quick look at it here on the screen share. It does take a minute for each page to load.
Because it uses AI to calculate, so it takes a lot to get the server farm.
But here is, if you scroll down after the team sheet, which is just the same ones we looked at on the show here, they're updated every morning. If you scroll down here to the DEF CON ratings, and there it is. These are, as a Rutgers fan, this is what I needed. I needed Auburn, Wisconsin, Iowa State, and Gonzaga to win tonight. And don't ask why, I just got to assume that's correct. I really need American to win at High Point. I didn't get that win. So that was a disappointment for me tonight. But Joey, it is really an awesome feature.
Yeah,
So
I
you know
love it.
exactly
Really
what
cool.
to cheer for, that to prove your standing.
And it even shows you where to tune in. So,
Yes.
obviously Rutgers wants Wisconsin to win that because they want the Big Ten school to look better. You could turn on the Big Ten network and watch that game and realize,
the broadcast feature is unbelievable.
You should
Where'd
not
you
be
get
acting
that?
like an idiot and be rooting for Schadenfreude. You should be rooting for your conference.
I'm still rooting for Shot.
All right. I'll put this down here. Matt, you're up.
This is one we've talked about a little bit, but this is a massive week for St. John's, who I think pretty much have proven their tournament quality good. This week can prove, are they maybe like protected seed quality good with these games upcoming? So Baylor the first game, and then another possible tournament level game the second day. Like against Tennessee, it looks like. This is one I think St. John's at least gets the Baylor win to prove, hey, this is a legitimate operation now. No more Chris Mullins, no more Mike Jarvis's. And that with Patino, I think St. John's is back.
Yeah, I think you're right. Actually, and I didn't really want to admit it until now, but they really impressed me in that New Mexico game. Who's up here? Dorman.
Yeah, something that stood out to me the first couple of weeks here, experience. Teams with experience. Everyone's got a ton of moving different parts coming into the season. But it seems to me the schools that are using the 20, 21, 22-year-olds that have played college basketball, albeit in different programs, have almost had a leg up on – I know there's big-time talent in the freshman ranks and All-Americans and McDonald's kids, and it's great, and their talent will grow and grow. But in the beginning, the teams with experience seem to mold quicker, understand the concepts better, and form a team aspect quicker than the freshmen have. So look for the teams with experience, especially early on in the season, to provide some upsets and exciting games.
Okay. Stalika.
With the Skip Prosser Classic having taken place on Saturday, Xavier ended up getting a 15-point win against Wake Forest with Steve Forbes coaching Wake Forest this time. 7 years ago, he actually had a much better shot at pulling off an upset when East Tennessee State walked into Cintas like after the Crosstown shootout. They had, I think at that point, a 16 or 17-point lead and looked like they were going to get a big upset, but alas for them, Chris Mack's team ended up making a big comeback, and that ended up sparking a team that would eventually get the #1 seed that year. But that being said, that was Wake's first true road test where they came up a bit short, and Xavier, we'll see. Obviously, they got one more bye game at home this week, and then they get the Fort Myers tip off against South Carolina and either Michigan or Virginia Tech, where we'll know are the Musketeers a top 25 team. They're certainly one of the more experienced teams that Dorman has alluded to this year.
I'm maybe Michigan game Sleeka, but I'm not. Those opponents don't blow me out of the water this year, though. Either South Carolina and Vatech as the other two team opponents in there, but you got to win that event is what I'm kind of saying. I think Xavier has to win it.
I would say the odds are probably decent that they should win, but yes, if they're going to be ranked, that's a tournament they frankly should be winning this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And Griggs, you want to finish the show off?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to see a lot of coaches, but even more administrators sort of bellyache about the start of the year and how nobody is really in the basketball and how the arenas are empty and there isn't a lot of coverage and the ratings are low. But then those same people are like, hey, let's put VMI and Arkansas, Pine Bluff, and a few non-D1 teams on the schedule. I don't claim to be the smartest person in the world, but even I can figure that one out. Like why that there's a lack of interest at this point in the year. And I would like to point out that while overall it hasn't gotten as intense as it will in January, and certainly not as intense as it'll be in March, the people show up for the games that are actually good. The Purdue-Alabama game rocked. Wisconsin was ram full, and it rocked for their game against Arizona. Maryland was off the hook against Marquette. It was great. So part of it is
As we record this, San Diego State is packed against the Zags.
Yeah, people care about games that are actually good. It isn't that they don't care about basketball so much as that they don't care about bad basketball. And until the mindset changes to do what Alabama did and do what Auburn did and do what a lot of these teams did to schedule these really heavyweights early and be willing to go on the road to play them, there's going to always be this blah and lack of interest, and your building's going to be half empty.
Well, unless you're Rutgers, who is sold out against Merrimack and
Were they really?
and, they're sold out all season. They're sold out all season. So,
okay, yeah.
well, Merrimack still to come, but they've been sold out every game. But most teams, yes, when you're scheduling Stanislaus Slate, Misericordia, and Friends College,
And you can't understand why people aren't coming.
Westminster.
That's an in-state rival. On that note, I do want to thank everyone for joining us. We'll be back Wednesday night with our Under the Radar show and next Monday with another Hoops HD report. But on behalf of David Dorman, John Teitel, Joby Fortson, Matt Zakowski, John Salika, and David Griggs, I'm Chad Sherwood. Thanks for joining us. We'll be talking to you again real soon.